That is in fact Air Force One that has just touched down in New Delhi, and the security arrangement being carried out at New Delhi as well at the airport. The US security forces as well as the consulate staff, all of them waiting for Joe Biden, along with the Indian welcoming group as well, headed by VK Singh is what we understand. The United States Air Force jet just landing right now, and Joe Biden, the President of the United States, has come down at the New Delhi airport, and it is being said that the President would first meet with the welcome party, after which he would be moving for a bilateral at around 7:45. We would get details about it. This particular bilateral will be held at the PM's residence at 7 RCR, and this is the majestic Air Force One, the plane that carries the United States President, set to be a flying White House all in itself. And of course, you can see the security arrangement that has been carried out. The bilateral between India and the United States is stated to be one of the biggest side meetings that are happening at the G20. It is said to be an attempt to also ensure that the ties that have gained momentum in the recent past is carried forward again, and this time with defense deals as well as with regards to nuclear reactors. It could be a big file on the table of both the world leaders like Modi as well as Biden. We are expecting them to in fact negotiate these items as well. It is being said that when it comes to Prime Minister Modi, he has in fact fostered closer ties with the United States. And one of the significant facts of Joe Biden in fact coming in at the moment is that it comes at a time when the Congress has ensured that the jet deal between the nations, which is being proposed, especially when it comes to GE's F414 jet, which is said to be the powerhouse for the LCA. Well, no objection has been given by the US Congress on that, especially when it comes to technology transfer. TOT is an aspect of Indian defense deals, and 80% of TOT is what is expected in that. And also several other bilateral issues also might be coming up for discussion, especially with regards to more consulates in both the countries, deeper ties with the Indian academic fraternity as well, facilitating the flow of students to both the universities in India as well as the United States. Well, the security arrangement being carried out on the ground as the stairway to the plane is being pushed towards the main door for Joe Biden's arrival. In fact, everyone has been waiting for the arrival of the US President at the G20. He, however, did mention that since the Chinese President Xi not coming in was a disappointment at the same time. Well, it is also being said that with the United States, the question has also been about how the United States would view several of India's attempt at green development as well. President Joe Biden had gone ahead and said that he has been impressed with some of those aspects of the development that we see. Also, interestingly enough, India has been actually looking at ensuring that financial flow in the world markets is in fact restored. The US is in fact one of the key investors when it comes to the financial flow in world markets, especially when it comes to investing and to move away from the protectionist regime that has been put into place as well. US President Joe Biden had left for India from the historic G20 Summit, and he has in fact arrived. It is being said that the US Air Force One has just touched down, and we are expecting Biden to in fact step down. Well, there was a health scare when it came to Joe Biden. What we understand was that Jill Biden was tested positive for COVID, and there was a health scare whether the US president will be able to attend the G20 summit or not. However, the White House did say that the president did undergo two tests, and both the tests have turned out negative, and therefore it was decided that the president would in fact go ahead and attend the G20 meet. Biden will be accompanied by U.S. National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan, Deputy Chief of Staff Jen O'Malley Dillon, and Director of Oval Office Operations Anito Simini, and is expected to meet PM Modi at his residence for the bilateral discussions on Friday. Well, the G20 Summit and its presidency holds big significance for India as such. India is looking at changes when it comes to world institutions as well as the bilateral attempts that India is trying to have on the sidelines of the G20 meet to negotiate with world leaders as well to bring a change when it comes to the G20 approach on several fronts, including climate change. A very significant aspect of the G20 discussions would revolve around climate change and green development. The red carpet there being rolled out by the people on the ground. It is going to be a red carpet welcome for President Joe Biden that we in fact see over here. Well, that is the red carpet being rolled on the ground for the U.S. President. He will be received by VK Singh, is what we understand at the moment. We have the U.S. Special Services also on the ground who provide security for the President, who is also keeping an eye on the events that is being carried out. Well, we have the doors opened, and probably in a few minutes we would have Joe Biden walking down on to that red carpet. So it's a red carpet welcome that has been given to Joe Biden. India, meanwhile, will be hosting around 200 meetings in 32 different sectors in multiple locations across India for this G20. This is the culmination of the series of meetings that we have seen with India's presidency of the G20. The G20 and its presidency has been taken with great interest by the Prime Minister Narendra Modi and said it is to showcase the country's strength when it comes to ensuring that its relations with several nations across the world on fronts like common global good is in fact seen. We do see that Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam was one of the aspects of the G20 meet, which is to say the world is one family, and how it affects everyone is the question that India has been raising, and also a look at the manner in which the things would be set forth when it comes to the discussions on the issue about trade and how the voice of the global south needs to be given an impetus. Meanwhile, this is the big bilateral that we are in fact tracking for you, the US-India bilateral that is going to be one of the most significant aspects of the G20 meet. Joe Biden is also expected to be invited for being the guest at the Republic Day. This is also one of the speculations that is coming in from the Foreign Office as well. But we're in fact just waiting. There we have Minister VK Singh out there waiting to receive the United States President. Well, the doors of the Air Force One has been open, and we are just waiting for the US President to in fact alight from the aircraft. In fact, we did say that it is being said that Joe Biden has been looking forward to continuing the work with Prime Minister Modi, especially when it comes to the bilateral relationship as well. G20 member countries, meanwhile, ladies and gentlemen, represent around 85% of the global GDP, over 75% of the global trade, and about 2/3 of the world's population. So it is a very important meet, and the US President has just arrived at New Delhi for that big meet and summit. We have seen how much of importance India has been giving for the G20 meet, and the arrival of the US President, especially in New Delhi, would highlight the factor of the bilateral relationship that we are also seeing on the sidelines of the G20 meet. Now, one of the aspects of the G20 meets has also been that the Chinese President Xi Jinping has not given his consent to go ahead and attend the meet. Instead, it is the Chinese Premier Li Qiang who would be attending the G20 meet. It is being said that the US did say in its statement that it is up to China to decide whether it wants to be the spoil sport or not. However, India has in fact also ensured that the issue about how China looks at the border conflict with India, especially the tensions in the recent past, does not come in the way of the G20 meet as such. And of course, we have one of the important aspects of cooperations with the G20, we have the question about the GE jet engine issue, the MQ-9 Reapers, on 5G, 6G, on collaboration in critical and emerging technologies, and progress also in the civil nuclear area. Remember, it was George Bush, the junior George Bush, who had in fact initiated the process about it. Well, in the studios, we have with us Shweta Kotari, who also has been following with keen interest when it comes to the G20 meet. When it comes to the United States, what are the key aspects of economics that we're going to see probably being on the discussion table? Of course, we've been talking about trade ties, defense ties. It took a lot for those defense ties to come in. But interestingly enough, I was reading a comment that the transfer of technology when it comes to General Electric is probably one of the first that the United States is planning to have when it comes to India, because when it comes to India's defense deals, TOT seems to be one of the biggest factors.
You know, it's interesting, Verghese. Thanks very much for having me on the show. It's interesting you brought in technology, because not just technology, of course, being the forefront of what the Prime Minister has been hoping to get on the bandwagon of as far as the US is concerned, but also primarily semiconductor, which is where India has been lagging for a very long time. And we know Micron is going to set up a plant in India very, very soon. There's massive investments that have already been proposed by the way of that mega event where we saw Indian Prime Minister going to the US. Some big promises were made, not just by various semiconductor companies, but also by tech giants. He had a meeting with the Tesla CEO, and those big promises, of course, are expected to come into fruition in some time now. But India is eyeing technology and a technology partner, specifically with respect to what's going to come by the way of semiconductor mission plan. India's ambition to become a semiconductor, or operate rather, a semiconductor fab perhaps in next 4 to 5 years. It's going to be a long drawn plan, but more the merrier. So more companies that come into India, more trade agreements that are signed, more investment promises that are made is going to help India realize that dream of having a semiconductor fab perhaps in the next couple of years.
One interesting aspect has been about nuclear reactors, and I was just saying that, George Bush had initiated the so-called civil nuclear deal with India, but that has never come to fruition, because as a country, we've been saying that if you have to become a manufacturing hub, you are going to be power hungry, and who is going to give that? Your coal is not going to last for long. Your hydro power projects are still there, but they have to also look at the domestic aspect. But for industrial applications, if nuclear power can be put up in a large way, of course, it will feed the industry that is going to, get into the manufacturing sector. So that has not been happening for a very long time.
Absolutely, and interesting you brought in power and coal, and because that's been one of the focused key sectors for India for a very long time. There's increased demand, and we know that one of the top agenda for G20 would be financing projects that are greener in nature, that are more sustainable in nature, in a sense coming up with more and more financing towards green energy, or energy that is sustainable, moving away from traditional sources of power, coal consumption.
I think we have the president, in fact,
US president there, live.
Yeah, we have Joe Biden, the US president, alighting from his Air Force One. He's being received by VK Singh. Union Minister VK Singh will be in fact receiving him there. He having a word with the Air Force officer, and now VK Singh receiving him. Well, also some kind of background music given for that welcome as such. Of course, every dignitary I was seeing, from Kishida to the CC from Egypt, all of them were given some kind of a dance kind of a welcome as such. And then we have this, of course, that is the US ambassador to India, Gassetti, who is there to welcome the president also.
And perhaps his daughter?
His daughter also having a word
welcoming
with Joe Biden.
Absolutely.
Gassetti is so famous in India that he has used social media so effectively to relay US policies, and
Right.
he goes with food but tends to end up saying that, you know, we're going to have better relations with your country, and how much of an impact our economic relationship is going to have.
I have to talk about that because, you know, US is perhaps looking for an alternative to China, and India presents that opportunity. And by the way, of the fact that both Joe Biden and Prime Minister Modi have great relationships. We've seen pictures coming out of when Modi was in the US and now Joe Biden is here in India. All of that, it's not just a picture perfect moment, it also augurs well for trade relations between the two countries. As of 2021, trade relationship, the bilateral trade ties between the two countries stand at about $157 billion. And those trade ties are only expected to deepen as the world is looking for a China plus one destination, and that plus one is inevitably India. It could be Thailand, it could be Philippines, but India, the market that India presents, the opportunity that India presents, not just in terms of resources that it has, but also the geography, all of that augurs well for a lot of manufacturing companies, for a lot of businesses that are looking for an alternative to China, and India is that alternative, Verghese.
I do agree. I think in there you have the beast, the vehicle that is carrying the US president. Of course, he will be going to 7RCR, but that is another piece of technology, as we were speaking about. It's said to be something that can stand an RPG attack. Of course, it's bulletproof, and also probably even a nuclear or biological attack. So it is one mission that is out there that displays US's level of tech perfection, and that's the aspect of it that also intrigues me also to a large extent. How much of technology you can cram into a car, and of course the US president's nicknamed vehicle, the Beast, crams a lot of that tech into it. So it's a miniature White House in a lot of ways. So of course that on display, the US president has in fact just boarded his car, and of course we are expecting him to leave. So you were talking about how India is turning out to be that alternative for China. In a post-COVID world, I think the world just suddenly realized that there is just too much of over-dependence on China.
Absolutely, over-dependence on China, and perhaps that over-dependence has not yielded a lot of positive results for a lot of companies, including companies that are in tech business, that are in semiconductor business, because we've seen a China which is getting increasingly competitive. Just this morning, China banned iPhone for its government officials, which resulted in Apple's share falling as much as 7% and affecting both Dow Jones and S&P. So essentially, you know, the idea being that if you look for one destination, which is what the world has done for a very long time, because China was very conducive as a place to invest. It had better policies, it had cheaper labor, they were rolling out a red carpet, and for a very long time, that was the market to go to set up an automobile company, to set up a semiconductor
You know,
fab.
when I was speaking to one of the foreign trade analysts, he said one thing about China. He said that the West unknowingly just armed China. That's what they did. He was giving me since you brought the question of iPhone, he said the idea of a phone with a touch screen, well, that just got technologically transferred to China and just started making cheaper copies of it. And you cannot in fact compete with it at all. It's not one or two or three brands.
The scale of it,
you just
cost
of it. And what resulted is that what could have been one of your biggest product that could have been sold across the world, suddenly a huge market was eaten away by them. And he was also saying that including you guys in India just love Chinese phones because you were able to use it and it gave you exactly the same feeling. It might not be that great of an experience about its quality and duration, but it gave you that experience. And everyone goes for a product experience. That's what they were saying. And they just sold you that experience, and we just lost out on that huge market. And we became costlier, of course, and the Chinese benefited. So they were talking about how difficult is now any company in the US is having a difficulty in sharing know-how on production when it comes to China.
Absolutely, and not just production, come to think of it, there is and I said that I think somewhere in a bulletin, yes.
In fact, we have them in fact leaving from the Air Force One. Of course, he'll be having a bilateral with Prime Minister Modi. We are expecting that to be around at 7:45 is what we understand. Joe Biden being briefed by his staff, welcomed by VK Singh for the G20, and also, as I said, there's speculation that probably he would be our Republic Day guest as such.